All right, people, we're back. Today was quite a day. I would say that this was definitely one of the funniest days in recent political history, but also one of the most humiliating and shameful. So I'd rank it up there with the day that Trump had his so-called infamous press conference in Helsinki with Putin. But this is even a little different because we're kind of strictly in the realm of electoral politics. And in the realm of electoral politics, I'm struggling to remember a day so cynical and transparently craven as today. And we'll see what happens, to quote Trump, in terms of the outcome tomorrow on Super Tuesday, or as I call it, Stupid Tuesday. But today was incredible. So let's rewind a minute. Biden wins a 28 or 29 point victory in South Carolina. Definitely a larger margin than most people expected, including me. I thought it would be in the 15 to 20 point range. Former governor of Virginia, former DNC chairperson, very deeply connected in institutional Democratic circles, in particular with the Clintons. He goes on TV and endorses Joe Biden. The following day, a bevy of new endorsements for Biden in terms of the U.S. House, the Senate, some local offices, some DNC members. But today was really the grand salami. What happened? Amy Klobuchar drops out all of a sudden, decides she's not going to contest Minnesota anymore. And not apparently because she felt that she was going to lose Minnesota, at least according to an internal poll that was provided to Ryan Grimm. The internal polls from the Klobuchar campaign said that she was going to win Minnesota by a pretty sizable margin. So it's not as if she was trying to preserve her dignity and she couldn't bear to lose her home state. So at the last second, she was going to withdraw and, try to forestall a potential PR disaster for her, because her big reputation is that she always sweeps Minnesota. But if this poll is to be believed, she was going to win Minnesota. So there was a different calculation there. Surely. So this morning or afternoon, I forget when it was exactly. I think it was in the afternoon. Klobuchar drops out and immediately announces she's endorsing Biden. Okay, interesting. Then you get a flood of new endorsements for Biden. Harry Reid comes out and says he's going to endorse Biden. Notably, he didn't do it before the Nevada caucus or even shortly thereafter. He waited till now to endorse Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden did not win the Nevada caucus. Bernie Sanders won the Nevada caucus by a very comfortable margin. Biden did come in second, and his performance in the Nevada caucus was actually better than you might have thought. But nonetheless, he still got blown out. But Harry Reid chooses today of all days to endorse Joe Biden. Interesting. Then you get Tammy Duckworth, senator from Illinois. There's a clue in there somewhere, and it has to do with Illinois. Remember that state. Tammy Duckworth, senator from Illinois, endorses Biden. Then you get, an assortment of others, members of the House, people like Susan Rice. Remember her? Former national security advisor in the Obama-Biden administration. She comes out and endorses Joe. And then, wow, Mayor Pete is going to be endorsing Joe as well. He's taking a charter flight from South Bend to Dallas, Texas to appear with Joe. Now, amusingly, they had to hold separate events for Amy and Pete. They couldn't appear together because of their petty personal death feud. So Joe met with Pete ahead of his Dallas rally, and they had a sort of like a press conference style event where Joe adulates Pete as having all the qualities of his deceased son, Bo, and they have this emotional moment. So Pete endorses Biden. Then the night goes on. We're waiting for this rally to start. A couple more endorsements flood in. Yeah, people like Marsha Fudge, who was a prominent member of the Congressional Black Caucus from Ohio, endorses him. Veronica Escobar from Texas, a couple others, mayors, etc. And then as we're waiting for this rally to begin, breaking news, another endorsement, Beto. Beto is bursting back onto the scene, and he is endorsing Joe Biden. I seem to remember Beto being endlessly hyped by a certain segment of the Democratic professional media class as this bold and fresh new figure who was going to take the political scene by storm because he was a new generation. He was ushering in a new generation of talent. Well, that's what Pete also sort of marketed himself as. That's why Pete ended up sort of crowding out Beto in the primary. They're all saying we need to pass the torch. We need to make way for a new generation of leaders. The Pod Save America podcast crew, which is former Obama guys who want to be like a little bit edgy enough, just edgy enough to appeal to like a young establishment liberal demographic. They were all Beto crazy. They puffed him up. They covered his Senate race against Ted Cruz fanatically. They desperately wanted him to run for president. He did run for president because he listened to these Pod Save America doofuses. And it was all supposed to be because we needed a sea change in the leadership of the Democratic Party. And what happens? Both Beto and Pete, they come out and endorse Joe Biden. Amazing. So if you watch this rally, you'll see that at the end, they bring out Beto, who prances onto the stage and has to pretend to be super enthusiastic about endorsing Joe Biden. Now, even if you are endorsing Joe Biden on practical grounds, on political grounds, I almost refuse to believe that you would be that invigorated by his presence, that you'd jump out onto the stage, do fist bumps, almost do cartwheels, and act like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread that you're standing there endorsing Joe Biden. Well, that's what Beto did. Okay, so what explains all this? What explains this rapid establishment coalescence around Biden in the space of roughly 48 hours? Well, yeah, the South Carolina thing was big. Biden's margin there was slightly unexpectedly wide. But even that really isn't sufficient to usher in this sort of collective action where you could have something as dramatic happen as two candidates drop out almost simultaneously, endorse the same candidate, even though those two candidates, Amy and Pete, had been at loggerheads. They despised each other. But they unite under the banner of Biden in quick succession. And then Beto swoops in, does the same. And all these other senators and members of the House and mayors and all that kind of thing, former Obama officials. What explains it? Well, sure enough, we got the explanation pretty quickly, and it's one that you probably could have inferred if you are a remotely astute observer of American politics, which is that according to MSNBC, NBC News, whatever, as of 9 o'clock tonight, they reported that former President Obama has been keeping close tabs on the 2020 presidential race. Okay. But what's he saying? What's he doing in relation to the race? Here's your answer. And according to aides close to Obama, Obama has sent the signal in the past 36 hours that he sees Biden as the candidate to back. So when people tell you, oh, you're crazy for thinking that there's a conspiracy, you're crazy for thinking there's some kind of coordinated or concerted effort here. No, it's not a conspiracy, but Obama, we now learn, sent a signal, whatever that means. Did he send a memo? Probably not. Did he meet anybody in a smoke-filled room? Probably not. Did he hatch some kind of corrupt deal? Probably not. But if he sends a signal, that's enough to mobilize huge portions of like the institutional party apparatus. And that's why all of a sudden you have all these establishment apparatchiks flooding into the Biden campaign. It's as simple as that. So this is an establishment coalescence. And look, I don't necessarily want to prejudge what's going to happen tomorrow, but I think the people who are super confident about Bernie getting a big delegate lead, maybe we're a little overconfident because there are a fair amount of signs now that Biden is going way, 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 way up. Who knows what the ultimate outcome will be again? But number one, you got to assume that. So I'm looking now at the 538 model, which you got to take with a grain of salt. But it now shows Biden surpassing Bernie in terms of the delegate count that he's slated to get tomorrow. I mean, you got to assume that Biden, given the margin in South Carolina, there are states that are demographically similar across the South that you would have to expect are going to be overwhelmingly for Biden. If he runs up those margins in the South, that's huge. If one candidate sweeps an entire region, essentially, then it's hard to beat them. Now, that could be counteracted by Bernie sweeping California. But remember, these candidates dropping out likely means that Biden's going to be viable in many more congressional districts than he otherwise might have been. Warren's staying in the race with her super PAC money probably cuts down Bernie's margins to some extent in California and other places. So I don't know. We'll have to see. But the race is extremely volatile right now. There was a lot of polling error in South Carolina. There was actually a fair amount of polling error in New Hampshire. Pete overperformed his polls in New Hampshire and Iowa, and Bernie slightly underperformed. Now Bernie overperformed in Nevada, which might be a good sign for California. But again, it's so speculative at this point. It's hard to say. But I had a piece in that just came out that I just sort of wrote in a fit of rage after watching this Biden, Pete, Amy spectacle. And I'll link to it. It's in the Spectator. So once the stream is done, you could click it in the description box. But what I'm essentially arguing here is that Amy and Pete are rather sociopathic. Now, the pundit reaction is that, Amy and Pete, they're so selfless. They're so noble for ending their campaigns when it was right. They should be was brave to basically gut punch your supporters who have been preparing for Super Tuesday for over a year. Your staff, your volunteers, your voters. You're saying it's brave to give them every indication that you're going to be actively contesting on Super Tuesday, and then hours before, cut the rug, pull the rug out from under them? How is that brave? How is that loyal? How is that anything virtuous? Especially if it's all done in service of this vague, like, pundit calculation as to what their effect would be vis-a-vis Bernie and Biden. How is that noble or principled or laudable in any remote respect? It's only that if you think that what they're doing is right in the sense that it diminishes or it disadvantages Bernie. So there's nothing to applaud about that. I mean, one reason why I have a unique amount of respect for Tulsi that she wouldn't make. Everything that I've seen and observed of her and know of her tells me that she would not make this kind of petty, reactive decision based on a sort of vulgar strategic calculation. She wouldn't do that. It's just not in her nature. Because you know why she's running for president? Because she has principles and she wants to espouse those principles. Somebody's saying that there's no audio. Can people could just confirm that the audio is okay? It might just be a troll who's trying to throw me off of my train of thought. Okay. Anyway, I'll continue. Right. So the everything I know of Tulsi tells me that she would not act in this way. Party, you got to do X, Y, and Z, and here's how you'll benefit personally from it down the line. Here's how your career prospects will be enhanced. That's just not what she would do because she's running from a standpoint of principle. And I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. I guess I gotta upgrade my internet account or something. Okay, so if buffering now, I apologize. I'll see what I can do to rectify that. Anyway, just read the article, and maybe I'll have Comcast come tomorrow. Sorry. Or if you can deal with the buffering, I'll just complete the thought. So what Amy and Pete tell us, in contrast with Tulsi, is that they're not running from a standpoint of principle. They're running from a standpoint of personal aggrandizement. That's what their campaigns were about from the beginning. And this confirms it because they're willing to essentially betray their voters. I mean, we might be at a point now where hundreds of thousands of votes were cast for Amy and Pete that are now going to be voided because people voted for them on false pretenses, believing them that they were going to be actively contesting on Super Tuesday, which they weren't. So, that tells you a lot about them. And because of internet connection issues, I'll see if I can figure that out. Like I said, read the Spectator piece, and well, to quote Donald Trump, we'll see what happens tomorrow. Okay, bye.